What kind of religion needs a boogeyman? Think about it. Christianity claims to be monotheistic, one God, one truth, and one ultimate power. And yet, Christian homes are some of the only places you'll find kids terrified of monsters under the bed, demons in the closet, or witches riding their backs at night. If God is supposed to be sovereign, why does the Christian imagination need so many extra villains? Why does a religion that claims to be anchored in truth rely so heavily on superstition? Today, we're unpacking the strange superstitions that thrive in Christian households almost exclusively. Fears that don't usually show up in secular homes. From the boogeyman and demons in the shadows to Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, these myths create a world where unseen forces control everything. And here's the catch: it's not just about childhood stories. These fears and fantasies act as cultural scaffolding, training children to obey authority, to trust the unseen over their own senses, and to see doubt as betrayal. So let's break it down. First, the fear based myths, the boogeyman, demons, and witches. Then, the so called benevolent myths like Santa and the Easter Bunny. After that, we'll look at why secular homes raise kids differently. And finally, what all of this means for the bigger picture of faith and superstition. Let's begin with the paradox of the boogeyman. On paper, Christianity is monotheistic, one God sovereign over everything. That doesn't leave room for extra supernatural entities like a boogeyman lurking under the bed. And yet, the boogeyman, along with demons in the closet or shadows in the hallway, is almost exclusively reinforced in Christian homes. Why? Christianity may be officially monotheistic, but the culture of spiritual warfare creates a dualistic imagination: God versus Satan, angels versus demons, heaven versus hell, good juju versus bad juju. Within this framework, there's always something else out there to fear. Fear then becomes a disciplinary shortcut. Telling a child the boogeyman will get you if you don't behave is a lot easier than explaining ethics, boundaries, or natural consequences. But the question still remains: in a monotheistic framework, why then isn't it just the devil is going to get you? Many parents don't consciously believe in the boogeyman, demons in shadows, or witches riding backs, but they still pass those ideas down, often because they were raised with the same warnings. It's cultural muscle memory, even when divorced from theology. So, even though the boogeyman doesn't belong in a Christian doctrinal system, Christian households incubate him anyway. The inconsistency is covered by the larger climate of fear. If the world is full of unseen evil, then the boogeyman fits right in. Now, every child has moments of looking into the dark and thinking they see something move. In many Pentecostal or charismatic households, those optical illusions are reinterpreted many times as demons trying to get you. Parents tell children to invoke the name of Jesus, quote scripture, or sing a worship song to fight them off. Now, this is more than superstition. It's early discipleship into a worldview where fear is real, invisible forces stalk the night, and safety comes not from explanation or exploration, but from ritualized appeals to authority. Help, somebody save me. It trains the child to outsource security rather than develop understanding. Now, across many cultures, sleep paralysis has generated folklore. In Black Christian households, especially, the phrase "a witch is riding your back" is still common. Instead of being explained as a neurological hiccup where your body wakes up before your brain turns muscle control back on, it's described as an act of demonic oppression. This interpretation ties a normal biological event into the cosmic battlefield between good and evil. The experience is terrifying enough, but layering spiritual warfare on top cements it as proof or evidence of Satan's activity. Even parents who don't personally believe in the boogeyman, demons, or witches often reinforce these ideas. Sometimes they shrug it off as harmless fun, not realizing how deeply it can shape a child's fear map. Other times, they know full well their child is experiencing illusions, shadows, noises, or sleep paralysis, but rather than explaining the science, they fall back on the supernatural story. Why? It's a quicker explanation, expedience. Pray about it requires less conversation than let's talk about light refraction, imagination, and your brain. It's what their parents told them, so it feels natural to repeat. Tradition is often so much easier than truth. And then fear gives parents leverage. If a child believes that the world is full of hidden spiritual danger, parents become the gatekeepers of safety and knowledge. Children raised in these environments learn to see the ordinary world as spiritually dangerous. Nightmares, house creaks, shadows, even their own neurological quirks become evidence of evil. Fear isn't just normalized, it's sanctified. It becomes a part of the religious environment itself, training children to view life through the lens of constant threat and divine rescue. But let's also talk about some of the benevolent myths, which often become training wheels for belief. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy are nearly universal in Christian households. They function as friendly supernatural agents. Santa Claus rewards obedience and good behavior, and his omniscience, he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, mirrors the God concept. Then you have the Easter Bunny, which is linked to springtime and rebirth, folded neatly into Christian celebrations of resurrection. And then even the tooth fairy creates a magical economy. You leave something under your pillow, and an unseen being leaves you money. Each figure is whimsical on the surface, but in practice, they create a structure where unseen agents are active in daily life, watching, rewarding, and responding. Here's the paradox: Christianity often claims to be grounded in truth and to stand against idols or falsehoods. Yet Jesus, Santa, and the Easter Bunny often share the same stage in Christian households. In families where Jesus is central, the other magical figures nearly always show up. In households where Jesus isn't central, these myths are often absent. It's almost as if Jesus, Santa, and the Easter Bunny are members of the same category: benevolent mediaries who all enforce a moral or cultural script through magical presence. This makes the religion's anti idol stance ring extremely hollow. If truth is the anchor, why tolerate and even encourage so much make believe alongside it? Especially in American Christianity, there's a heavy reliance on intermediaries. Why? Christianity absorbed these myths from European folklore and American consumer culture. They became seasonal anchors for family and community celebration. Myths work to soften the harshness of doctrine. A child who fears hellfire can also look forward to Santa's gift, the bunny's candy, or the fairy's coins. Fear is paired with sweetness, creating a carrot and a stick system. These myths create mental pathways for accepting unseen systems. If a child can trust that their tooth will be exchanged for money by an unseen being, it's not a big leap to accept that their prayers are being heard by an unseen God. The myths allow parents to manage behavior through unseen oversight. The same way God watches everything you do, so does Santa. This keeps children in line long before abstract theology can make sense to them. In non believing households, the same figures might appear, but they're usually treated differently, as stories, not realities. Parents might tell the Santa tale, but reveal the truth when children ask. They may do the cultural play. Kids may join the Easter egg hunt or write letters to Santa, but the parents don't embed these myths into the framework of morality, obedience, or reality. Non believing parents may encourage creativity but prioritize honesty and grounding over prolonged deception. Ultimately, these benevolent myths do more than just entertain. They train children to live inside systems where the unseen governs their lives. Reward and punishment are invisible. You don't see Santa watching, but you know he is. You don't see God judging, but you're told he does. Your transactions with the unseen become normalized. A tooth becomes money, a prayer becomes answered blessing, and then authority validates the myth. If parents insist the tooth fairy is real, a child believes them. If parents insist that Santa Claus is real, a child believes them. Later, when those same parents insist that God and Jesus are real, the same trust carries over. It's soft conditioning, learning to accept without question the promises of unseen powers. Isn't it strange? A faith that claims to be the one solid truth in the universe relies on the same scaffolding of make believe as Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. If the truth is so self evident, why does it need so many magical assistants? In secular homes, fear is met with reason and reassurance rather than supernatural explanation. Monsters under the bed? parents explain shadows, sounds, and the way imagination works. Sleep paralysis is taught as a biological event, the brain temporarily waking before the body regains motor control. Night noises is the science of the house. Air ducts creak, wood expands, pipes shift. This cultivates trust in the natural explanations. Children learn early that their questions deserve real answers. Fear becomes a doorway into curiosity. A child who asks, "Why do shadows look like they're moving?" can be led into lessons about light, perception, and the human brain. Instead of outsourcing safety to prayer, they develop a sense of agency. Fear is not fought with incantations, but with knowledge and exploration. Secular households still nurture imagination, but they draw a clear line between fiction and fact. Fairy tales, superheroes, and fantasy worlds are introduced as stories, not realities. Children can play with dragons or wizards or mermaids and vampires, but they know it's pretend. This fosters creativity without confusion. A child can build castles out of Legos, create epic storylines, and still understand that the world around them has rules that can be discovered, understood, and tested. Their imagination becomes an engine for invention, not a substitute for explanation. When children are told the truth about myths early, they often take pride in knowing and can even help younger siblings play along. The shift is empowering, not disillusioning. Instead of prayer or ritual, secular homes emphasize practical coping strategies, night lights to ease the fear of the dark, breathing techniques to manage anxiety, discussions about dreams to help children process imagination versus reality. This approach gives children tools they can use for the rest of their lives. Fear becomes manageable, not mystical. It develops resilience. When kids see that their actions, turning on a light or breathing deeply or asking questions, when they see that that can reduce fear, they internalize a sense of control, security, and strength. They grow up less dependent on authority figures for answers and more confident in their ability to investigate and to cope. When children are kept in superstition for too long, there is a cost. Curiosity is stunted. If demons did it is already an acceptable answer, why even ask questions about the shadows, dreams, or biology? Innovation is dulled. The instinct to wonder why is replaced with pray about it or only God knows. The natural scientist inside the child is silenced before it can even take root. Imagination gets hijacked. Instead of being used to explore possibilities, imagination is confined with fear based scripts. By contrast, when secular homes mark fiction as fiction and truth as truth, imagination and curiosity reinforce each other. Storytelling excites the mind, while explanations ground it. In Christian homes, superstition is interwoven with theology. Fear and fantasy are religiously sanctified. In secular homes, superstition is absent, clearly labeled, or dismantled early. Children are not taught to confuse fantasy with reality, but to engage with both in their proper place. When we teach children that the world is magical but not mysterious, we give them the freedom to wonder without fear. We show them that reality is not something to hide from, it's something to explore. In religious households, superstition doesn't exist in isolation. It acts as scaffolding for faith itself. Children are taught that the unseen is not just possible, but primary. The invisible world is more real than the physical one. Authority, whether parental or pastoral, defines truth. If mom says the boogeyman is real or pastor says demons stalk the night, the child accepts it. Questioning these myths isn't just intellectual curiosity. It feels like disobedience or betrayal of family, faith, and even God. Superstition in this sense is not an accident. It is a training ground for obedience to authority and for belief without evidence. It might seem strange that Christian home keeps both fear-based myths, demons, witches, and boogeymen, and benevolent myths like Santa, angels, and the tooth fairy. But together, they reinforce the same lesson: trust in the unseen. Fear myths teach children that the unseen can hurt you, so you need to stay obedient, pray, or seek protection. The benevolent myths teach children that the unseen can bless you, so you must believe, stay obedient, and stay faithful. Together, they construct a worldview where unseen forces run the show. The myths don't have to be consistent, they only need to reinforce the habit of belief without evidence. These myths are maintained because the source of truth is not observation or reasoning, it's authority. A child may see that the shadows are just their eyes adjusting, but if their parents insist it's a demon, the authority overrides the evidence. A child may doubt the tooth fairy, but if their parents insist money came from an unseen being, they're encouraged to suspend disbelief. In the same way, later in life, if a scripture or a pastor's words conflict with personal experience, the authority is expected to win. This conditioning creates a lifetime pattern. Don't trust your senses, trust the system. Superstitions then aren't just childish side stories, they're functional. They train the acceptance of mystery without proof. Children learn to live with explanations that require no evidence. They normalize outsourcing security and reward. Safety and blessings are mediated through unseen powers. They silence doubt. To question the myth feels like rebellion, not reason. This is why they persist generation after generation, even when parents don't consciously believe them anymore. The scaffolding holds up the structure of faith. The real story isn't about monsters under the bed or Santa at the chimney. It's about how a culture teaches children to privilege authority over evidence, to treat superstition as sacred, and to see belief without proof as a virtue. The scaffolding doesn't just shape childhood, it builds the framework for a lifetime of faith. When we step back and look at the full picture, the boogeyman in the shadows, the witch on your back, Santa at Christmas, the tooth fairy at night, what we see is not random superstition. We see a system that trains children to fear what they can't see and to hope in what they can't prove, to obey authority over their own senses. In religious homes, this scaffolding feels normal because it's everywhere. Bedtime prayers that focus on death, stories of demons just outside the door, and magical figures who reward belief and obedience. Together, they build a world where the unseen is more real than the seen and where doubt feels like betrayal. But here's the irony. A faith that claims to be anchored in truth relies on the same scaffolding of myth and make believe that secular homes dismantle early. And when children are taught to privilege authority and superstition over curiosity and evidence, we don't just distort their imagination, we limit their potential to explore, to question, to innovate even. That's the difference. In secular homes, imagination and reality reinforce one another. In religious homes, imagination is conscripted into faith, and reality is obscured by it. So the question isn't really whether Santa or the boogeyman exist. The question is, what kind of world are we building for our children? One where fear and fantasy dictate truth, or one where curiosity and evidence open the way to it? When I think about what community is, when I think about what the church was for many people, I think about community as a service. I know so many people right now whose passion was media, and if it weren't for their church, they wouldn't be able to pursue that passion. I know so many people whose passion is music, and if it weren't for their church, they wouldn't have a place to practice that passion. I know people whose passion is communication and finding ways to inspire and motivate other people, and if it weren't for their churches, church shouldn't be the only place that meets those needs. It shouldn't be the only place that nurtures our gifts, platforms our voices, and empowers our living. That's why Bridge City Global is building community and creating the space to help you keep rising. Join us October 25th or the 26th in Venice or San Diego, your choice. Our local Bridge City community is having their initial liftoff weekend. And as a way of celebrating, we're hosting our very first Rise event. This is for you. We're about to shed the weight of limiting beliefs and open ourselves to clarity, purpose, and possibility. Through powerful voices and intentional community, you'll not only rediscover your own strength, but also the belonging that comes when we choose to rise side by side. And for those interested in being a part of this global community, go ahead and tap in now, and you may get an invite to our Friday evening and Sunday morning activities while you're in Cali. Don't miss this moment. Add Liftoff Weekend to your calendar and be ready to rise. Register now.
Take another shot at me. Take another shot.
Thank you for hanging out with me to the end today. If you enjoyed today's conversation, consider becoming a patron to support the content. If you value community that is progressive thinking, people-centric, and life-affirming, tap in using the link in the description. Bridge City isn't just a space to hang out. It's a place to connect, grow, and evolve. It's a community where we value who you're becoming over what you believe. Whether you're looking for a home to be at home with yourself and others, or you're looking for a strategy to make community impact without sacrificing your livelihood, or if you want to go as far as doing what I do in the service of community professionally, we're designing the space, the framework, and the platform to make it happen. Tap in so you can be one of the first to get involved. Also, we're officially in the month of October, so you still have time to make plans to meet me in Mississippi on October 16th at Mississippi State University, where I'm going to be sharing my confessions as an ex-pastor. It's going to be an incredible time. I'm going to be hitting some of the stuff that's in my book, Black Non-Believer Next Door. If you haven't got it yet, head over to Amazon and pick up your copy. And you still have time to register to meet me in LA or San Diego for either our Liftoff event or Rise. So if you're in California, close by, or just got enough money to fly, I'd love to see you there. It's going to be absolutely transformative. All right, that's all for today, folks. Until next time, keep rising.